Goliath's presumed potential is LV4. Numerically, he is tied with Lefiya. Once you cross this hurdle, you will become stronger. Convinced of this, Lefiya became even braver in her heart. Her face was cold as ice, but her heart was warmer than anything else. She kept a short distance from the giant, constantly moving to disrupt his movements and at the same time decisively slashing at him with her dagger. The me before, it was impossible to do such a thing. 3 years ago, no, Lefiya from a few months ago could imagine such a scene. The figure of himself fighting alone in the arms of the floor master. Even though his entire body was ignited by fighting spirit, there must still be a part of his heart trembling. No matter how much she changes, the weak Lefiya Voridis still remains in her heart. The giant's roar shook her heart. The majesty of the giant awakened the memory. In the depths of the memories, there was a shameful voice. This is weak, whiny, the most unpleasant of all, Lefiya. 3 years ago. In the same place as now, in the lobby of the 17th floor where the Great Wall of Sighs was located, Lefiya was trembling with a pale face. Nathan, Arisa, everyone. Seeing her blood-soaked companions lying in front of the terrifying giant, she was so scared that her teeth chattered. That day, the 7th squad broke school rules again. I want to see it on the 18th floor. At the suggestion of the 1st and 2nd teams, everyone from the 1st and 2nd teams got involved and 12 students launched an attack on the cave labyrinth. Of course, Arisa and Lefiya stopped. But that didn't stop Barton. In the end, even Nathan became interested in paradise and expressed his willingness to help. They ran out of the school area before reporting to Leon and the others. Lefiya and the others sighed and chased after them helplessly. At that time, she still had optimistic thoughts in her heart. Thinking there have been no problems so far, it probably won't matter this time. The Labyrinth Cave has also been explored many times. And this time there are 2 more medium-sized teams. Most of them are LV2, which is a bit like an adventurer's expedition. So although I was worried, a certain corner of my heart was thinking this time I will make it to the 18th floor. Until you see the broken giant. It is said that Goliath, who was attacked by adventurers, is still alive, lurking in the main passage and launching a strong attack. They screamed and were chased into the hall, and then a miserable feast began. First, little Nathan Powlum fell. He was not directly attacked. It's just that after the giant waved his hand and broke the ground, the flying stone bullets hit him. Immediately, he spurted out blood like a squeezed tomato, unable to move. Next is Arisa. She tried to rescue Nathan, who was still breathing but was surrounded by monsters and devastated. Barton wanted to protect her who was crying, roared and ran at the same time, saving Arisa and Nathan at the cost of a hand. Then, they call it a day. The Minotaur army surrounded him and their lives were like a dying candle. The other team members were bathed in the floor master's roar, fell into a desperate situation, and became the main target. They were crushed by the outstretched arms and flew through the air. Lefiya, whose eyes were filled with tears, was unable to move and could only lie there in a daze. Somewhere in her heart she always felt that as long as there is the team leader, Barton, things always work out. He is reckless and a problem child, but he is capable and trustworthy. He takes care of Lefiya and the others like an older brother. As long as he is so strong, he can get rid of any difficulties. She once thought so. But even Barton thus lost a hand and his face was stained with despair. The Minotaur was about to end his life. The dungeon is laughing at them. Why is this promised place afraid of being called the center of the world? Since ancient times, how many human lives have been taken by this magic cave? The dungeon looked at the students who had forgotten this, caressing their cheeks with cruel palms, and was about to break their necks in one fell swoop. Lefiya simply gave in inwardly. Release, release, the light, the longbow of the sacred forest. Lefiya, who was gripped by terror, shook her throat trembling with despair and let out a spell like a moan. I can't move my feet at all. You can't escape either. He would fall to the ground at any moment. But I still have to sing, otherwise Barton who fought alone, Nathan who sank into the blood fountain, and Arisa who was scarred will die. The hand that was gripping very tightly and could not be let go prepared the staff that was constantly shaking. Lefiya was shaken and lost normal thinking. At this moment, the giant's black shadow covered her. The nightmare symbol slowly raised her fist. Just as her heart was about to explode, Lefiya, who had finished her chant, hurriedly released magic. Bow, bow, arrow of light. The glowing arrow shot out and hit the giant's fist head-on. Violent spray of light was born, and the field of vision was dyed white. A shrill explosion sounded and Lefiya was thrown back. Goliath just sat back. The fist that hit Lefiya squarely was raised above her head, and she assumed a posture of bending backwards due to the reaction. Her fist was just smoking, without any scars. Lefiya's magic only blocked the giant's strike. Goliath slowly stood up, and the temperatureless monster's eyes shook the fragile elf. At this moment, Barton also exhausted his strength. Lefiya is very weak. Lefiya and the others no longer resisted. At that time, Lefiya and her 7th squad were tragically destroyed. Compared to that time, how much have I changed? The memory of that time was quickly reproduced and warm emotions were generated. I'm miserable. I'm powerless. Just crying myself. In the end, it was this kind of self that led to the result of losing important things, and now Lefiya is convinced of this. As if she wanted to erase the embarrassing memory, and as if she wanted to crush her anger and hatred towards her former self, she shouted loudly, "Penetrate, you must hit the arrow." As the chant resounded everywhere, Goliath, who went crazy, also swung his iron fist. It was a right fist aimed at Lefiya in front of him. It was a giant fist that drove the old self into despair. The memories of the past and present merged and Lefiya was torn apart. How much stronger have you gotten since then? Try it and you will know. Bow, arrow of light. The scepter stretched forward released a large flash of light, and at the same moment, it swung Goliath's fist. The deaths of both sides collided. Violent flashes illuminated the faces of the elf and the monster. Then, after a brief confrontation, Lefiya's magic destroyed the giant's entire arm and shoulder. Goliath, whose entire right arm disappeared from wrist to shoulder, screamed violently. He held the shoulder that was emitting high-temperature smoke with his left hand, frantically shook the black hair growing on top of his head, and struggled in pain, causing the entire hall to be surrounded by vibrations. The loud volume even made Nano and the others, who were isolated from the outside world by the barrier, terrified. The students understood exactly who was letting out the monster's horrible scream, which they had never heard before, and turned pale. Release that light, the sacred wood longbow. Its name is Marksman. Looking at this scene, Lefiya didn't feel any emotions, she just accepted the result and immediately loaded a new projectile. She ran quickly, trying to use parallel corner to finish off Goliath. At this moment, the monsters that came to support him finally arrived here from the entrance and launched an attack to stop his actions. Don't get in the way. Lefiya opened her eyes wide and began to kill. Swinging the dagger, the monster was cut into 8 pieces, and the bones were crushed with elbows and knees. The monster wanted to surround her, but she used magic. The violent flashes left a huge void in the army, but the monsters continued to reinforce and surrounded it. The distressed Goliath also launched an attack with bloodshot eyes. Regardless, he would also take down the several soldiers. The situation was instantly reversed. An individual with surprising strength and a group of almost 40. Even if the giant blow didn't hit her directly, the consequences would send Lefiya's slender body flying, and the sweeping claws and fangs took away a certain part of her body little by little. Cloth was torn and blood was flying. The tip of her ear was torn off and part of her hair was also cut off. The roars of the ferocious monsters turned into sadistic laughter. She had such auditory hallucinations. But even so, there was no sign of hesitation on Lefiya's face.